Hello there, this is Stormdog, and today I'd like to talk about the lost John Wayne epic, The Big Trail from 1930. It has been forgotten and overshadowed within his career, despite the film being incredible, and one of, if not the first epic movies. We rarely see true epic movies anymore, not like Hollywood of old. We see movies that are meant to feel epic, but are not necessarily epic in presentation on production. They are much more rare now. The average film viewer of today is not sitting down to watch the epics of the past, and I'll not say every epic from the height of the trend was good. Epic movies of the past were almost always historically based reproductions of an era, but now if you were to look up a list of epic movies online, you'd find a lot of contemporary films on those lists. The authors of such lists have just begun throwing their favorite films on the list. Those are really good films, but they don't fit what used to define the genre of an epic. The Longest Day, The Ten Commandments, and Gone with the Wind are some of the famous ones that come to mind. Recent attempts at historical epics, like Kingdom of Heaven, Master and Commander, The Last Duel, and The Northman, are closer to what I'd call an epic, but were not hugely successful. Each has been recognized as quality by discerning viewers and have gained a large following since their release. I was not familiar with the John Wayne movie in question, despite being a big fan of him since seeing him in Stagecoach and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance when I was a child. I've read biographies of him, but had not heard of The Big Trail. I was reading through Wayne and Ford by Nancy Schoenberger, and the author talked about the early impact this film had on the relationship between Wayne and famous director John Ford, although it was not a positive impact and almost derailed the relationship. John Wayne's first major hit would be Stagecoach, directed by Ford 9 years after The Big Trail. Ford and Wayne met on the film Mother Machree in 1928, where Wayne had a bit part herding geese in the film. Ford continued giving Wayne work as an extra and stunt work as well. Ford, from various accounts, seemed to have been grooming Wayne until his acting abilities were good enough to handle a large role. However, director Raoul Walsh brought an end to this. Walsh had at one point been an actor, but a car wreck caused by a jackrabbit hitting his windshield resulted in the loss of his right eye. Some publications say it was his left eye. Just go look up his picture. He turned down the doctor's offer of a glass eye and chose a black eye patch. Years later, as Ford's eyesight was failing, he adopted a similar eye patch, possibly inspired by Walsh. This further may have inspired the character design of Rooster Cogburn in True Grit, as the book, True Grit, just describes the character as having an empty eye socket. After his wreck, Walsh went into directing and was quite successful with films such as The Big Trail, High Sierra, and gangster classic White Heat. He began working on his proposed epic, The Big Trail, in 1929. He wanted Gary Cooper, but Cooper wasn't available. That's an interesting link between the careers of Cooper and Wayne when you also consider that Rio Bravo, directed by Ford and starring Wayne, was made as a rebuttal to High Noon. High Noon almost always ends up on the list of top Western films ever made, and remains highly rated on various review sites, but it's not very good if you believe in reject modernity, embrace masculinity. I recently watched it, and the plot starts fine, but it consists of Gary Cooper's lawman going around town, seeking help as the noon train approaches, heralding the arrival of the villain who has come to seek revenge. The entire town backs down, each blaming something different, whether it's profits over moral values, an incredibly unbiblical view of religion, past trauma with other villains, old age, and various others, all resulting in the most low testosterone frontier town I'd seen in a long time. If you've read the Richard Wrangham and Dale Peterson theory on the Chimpanzee Society versus the Bonobo Masturbation Society, which compares human society run by masculinity versus human society run by femininity, you'll see this movie dives headlong into the Bonobo Masturbation Society. If you've already run down to the comments section to take your shots, then I'd recommend the book The Way of Men by Jack Donovan to you, but sadly you probably won't be able to handle it. I wouldn't treat it as a gospel treatise, but it is incredibly useful if you have an interest in the benefits of traditional masculinity. Either way, Cooper's character cannot get any help and never prepares for the coming fight. He has an entire rack of repeating rifles in his office, even checks them, but never carries them. At most, he carries one extra revolver. He turns down the two people who try to help him, one because he has only one eye, and the other because he is only a teenager. In the West, by early teenage years, young people were doing the work asked of adults, and this is a basic error in the script's understanding of the time, but who reads Louis L'Amour anymore? Either man who tries to help him could have been armed with a shotgun, an even better equalizer in the West than the Colt, and one of the two meanest ways to die according to old quick draw artist. Both are turned down so Cooper can go back to his impotent moral struggle, and I mean that in every sense of the word. At the end, Cooper gives away the element of surprise, is fired upon, and we are given an extremely humdrum, contrived, cliched shootout. I called out every move before it happened, and the person I was watching with asked if I'd seen it before. It was my first viewing. The action was just that uninspired. At the end, one person finally helps Cooper, and once the bad guys are dead, the townspeople come out of hiding. Cooper throws his badge on the ground and leaves town like it's this incredible moral value. It's a great movie if you believe in all the strawman ideas of self-defense within society, but sucks if you believe in real-world tactical application of any kind of masculinity. Bringing me back to John Ford claimed he didn't view Americans as so willing to stand by and never defend their society that he made Rio Bravo, where a group of men band together to protect their society. I know, you're saying High Noon was about the Red Scare. It did turn out, in fact, that Hollywood and politics were being infiltrated by communists. I don't agree with the extent that McCarthyism was taken to, but it wasn't completely fabricated. Nor was having a communist influence positive. The death toll for communism far exceeds the death toll for Nazism. Two sides of the same coin, always resulting in genocide. And no doubt you're sitting there saying, well, my professor says real communism has never been tried. Then just leave. Just leave. Psychology has found that the necessary emotional attachment to fellow members of society to make such a concept work does not exist beyond the number of 300 people. Even the US military has realized this and has had to implement this in their organizational structure. Anyway, back to the big trail. Raoul Walsh liked what he saw in Wayne at Fox Studios and ended up casting him in the lead role. He picked Wayne after seeing how easily the young man threw a chair up on his shoulder and carried it. Walsh helped him develop the screen name of John Wayne instead of his birth name of Marion Morrison. Wayne was 23 at the time. The film deals with Wayne's character guiding a group of settlers across the frontier of America. Wayne's character takes the job because he believes some of the people in the wagon train murdered his friend. Along the way, he finds romance. The film was an early example of widescreen. In fact, there is an excellent restored copy here on YouTube, which is how I watched the film. This use of 70mm grandeur film, as it was called, contributed to the failure of the film. It is stunning, but they had to do about 6 different formats of the film, depending what theaters it would be shown at and what type of reel they could project, as well as a few foreign language versions. This was the last film they made with the 70mm Grandeur film. The first was Fox Movietone Follies of 1929. As a whole, the cinema industry was still working on switching to talkies, and the added cost was just too much to sustain. For years for this film, only the 35mm version existed, until the 70mm version was finally restored and was shown on cable in the 90s. Sequences of this film are just incredible. They ford a river, and wagons full of people get swept away, as well as cattle and horses. In another sequence, they attempt to make their way through thunderstorms, with the wagons getting stuck in mud. In another sequence, they take the wagons down a sheer cliff face, lowering them by ropes. At one point, the ropes give way and a wagon plummets to the ground. There is an expansive sequence here where they are surrounded by Native Americans and they circle the wagons. I haven't found any historical record of Native Americans actually doing this, despite the trope in films. The Native Americans were much more canny warriors than this and utilized guerrilla tactics before the term was even really invented. Many tribes were highly skilled at riding on the side of their horses to evade enemy fire, while firing away with their bows the whole time. Walsh did hire around 725 natives from various tribes to film these sequences, besides his cast of 93 actors. The film accurately portrays Wayne's guide using Native American guides that within the plot, his character already knew and shared a mutual respect with. Even within one nationality of Native Americans, all the tribes may not be organized together or share the same views, making treaties often useless on large scales. I recommend the book Empire of the Sun Over Moon by S.C. Gwynne to begin your understanding of such realities. Walsh used 185 wagons, 1,800 cows, 1,400 horses, 500 buffaloes, and 700 various other animals in filming this movie. The movie ends in the redwoods during a snowstorm, and it is incredible. Some of the vocal audio can be hard to hear at low volumes, even in the restored version. The restored version is sort of a gray area in copyright law, as far as it not being completely public domain, but I'm cool with that. John Wayne has a great speech here about the spirit of the pioneers that came before and inspires the group not to quit. It's a great patriotic character that has gone unrecognized for so long. Early in the film, in camera, he throws 3 knives in one shot and lands each one. I researched if they faked it, but no, the director had Wayne learn from a knife trainer for a few weeks because the director said they couldn't fake it. I didn't know Wayne could do that. Wayne here is young and full of vitality, with longer hair than I'm used to seeing him with. The guy was very striking in his youth, not yet the grizzled mentor of later films, and you can already see the American values he was so known for here. Various sources say that some of these really dangerous sequences here were not planned, like the wagon falling from the cliff. Claims are made that the movie resulted in 7 deaths throughout filming. It's said that Wayne got dysentery early in filming and lost 20 pounds, despite him already being much slimmer than he was during the height of his career. Everything here is so incredible that I can't tell if any of it was fabricated or really happened in the natural scenes. I don't feel that I have a need to inform audiences about who John Wayne was and what he was famous for.
I'm a lucky fella. Lucky that I was brought up to believe in a lot of things I found worthwhile. I believe in common decency. I believe in my country, my family, my fellow man, and my God. I believe in straight talk and freedom with an accent on the free, which is still the best 4-letter word I know. Every man and woman or child I've ever known, met, seen, or heard of wants one thing more than anything else in the world. That one thing is tomorrow. Tomorrow, that's the only thing any of us have going for us. And I believe this: if tomorrow all of us, every single one of us, gets out of bed and says, This is my country, and I'm going to do good for it. We'll make the greatest step forward since a pilgrim's foot found Plymouth Rock. Just might work. We'll never know unless we give it a fair try.
John Wayne's romantic co-star, Marguerite Churchill, was only 20 when the movie was made and looked quite young. She was in the famous adaptation of Zane Grey's book, Riders of the Purple Sage, the next year in 1931. She was married to George O'Brien, a famous actor who was the son of a San Francisco chief of police and heavyweight boxing champion of the Pacific Fleet during World War I. They were married from 1933 to 1948 before divorcing. She stopped acting in 1952 and is considered to be Wayne's first leading lady. She did one more movie after divorcing O'Brien, married a sculptor, and stayed out of the public eye until her death in 2000. This was the final completed film of Tyrone Power Sr., as well as his only sound role in the talkies. He was born in England, but after college immigrated to the US. He ended up in Florida as a citrus worker. He hated it and went into stage plays, then became a matinee idol, and eventually got into films in 1914. In 1931, he died of a massive heart attack in the arms of his 17-year-old son, also named Tyrone Power. His son went on to become one of the great romantic swashbucklers of cinema, rivaling even Errol Flynn. Sadly, in 1958, at the age of 44, while filming a duel with actor George Sanders on the set of the film Solomon and Sheba, he also had a heart attack and died on the way to the hospital. His scenes for that movie were about 75% finished. That same year, his recent wife became pregnant with their son Tyrone Power Jr., who also became an actor, creating 4 successive generations of an actor being named Tyrone Power. Raoul Walsh had a very interesting career. He learned the craft of directing under D.W. Griffith, namely on the film Birth of a Nation. From what I've seen, it's a very well-made film and was extremely groundbreaking the technology of the era, but the plot is just basically racist. The film's original title was The Klansman, and it depicts the KKK as a virtuous force. It was a huge commercial success, even being one of the highest-grossing films ever made. It pioneered techniques like close-ups and fade-outs, was one of the first non-serial multi-part films, was the first to have a large-scale stage battle scene with hundreds of extras. It was also the first film to ever be shown at the White House, at the request of famous Democrat President Woodrow Wilson. Within that movie, Walsh even played John Wilkes Booth. A year before, he played Pancho Villa, the famous Mexican revolutionary in the film The Life of General Villa. In some scenes, Pancho Villa himself played the role. The filmmakers filmed actual battles with Villa that he was in and which he did during daylight for the sake of filming, and even shots of him knocking the teeth out of corpses. They paid Villa $25,000 and 50% of the profits for this. Barely any of this film exists today and is considered one of the greatest lost films. This was all dramatized in the Antonio Banderas film and starring Pancho Villa as himself. This was where Walsh began to get experience as a co-director. He worked with Griffith on 14 films. Walsh ended up directing the first gangster feature film, Regeneration, in 1915. He later directed The Roaring Twenties, another gangster classic. Cagney and Bogart both owe some of their greatest roles to his directing. He directed the Douglas Fairbanks classic, The Thief of Baghdad. He served as an officer during World War I. He died at the age of 93 in 1980 of a heart attack. This film is beautiful and stirring to the American soul. The film work is incredible. Stunts that were staged or possibly just happened while the camera was rolling are unbelievable. Sadly, it was a box office flop, and many critics took it out on Wayne. The studio had planned 2 more big-budget westerns with Wayne as the main star, but immediately canceled them. He was sent back to the B-Western movie mill for the next 9 years before John Ford felt he had matured enough for a big-budget role. During those 9 years, Wayne made many films, but there is very little that stands out. During that time, Ford wouldn't even speak to him, possibly feeling he had been snubbed by the actor he was preparing and feeling Walsh had stolen him. All Wayne's films during this era were quickly, cheaply made, and very derivative. Like I said, the restored cut is available here on YouTube and is worth a watch. It's a sumptuous pioneer film full of spectacle and the spirit that brought civilization across the continent. Of the first 10 years of Wayne's film career, it is the most worth watching up until Stagecoach. With the length of this script, this will most likely turn out to be a Reasons to Watch, where I make it more of a deep dive than my Thoughts On series. There are more stories from the set of this movie, but I don't have time for all of them. Subscribing is the biggest thing you can do for the channel, but comments adding to the discussion with your experiences and more information is very appreciated. If you're going down there with one of those actually comments, don't bother. Until next time, this has been Stormdog.
The man here that knows the path over them hills. Where? For turning back. Wait! Follow me, and I'll lead you to that valley that Coleman told us about. Coleman, huh? He's the only one that knows the way out. And he's deserted us. If he was here, I'd shoot him down in his tracks.
Well, Black, that's when you're going to start this shooting.
You're just in time, Coleman. Did you find the Cameron?
Over yonder. What's the trouble here?
They're all against me. They're turning back.
No, you're not. We can't turn back. We're blazing a trail that started in England. Not even the storms of the sea could turn back those first settlers. And they carried it on further. They blazed it on through the wilderness of Kentucky. Famine, hunger, not even massacres could stop them. And now we've picked up the trail again. And nothing can stop us. Not even the snows of winter nor the peaks of the highest mountains. We're building a nation, but we've got to suffer. No great trail was ever blazed without hardship. And you gotta fight. That's life. And when you stop fighting, that's death. What are you gonna do? Lie down and die? No! Not in 1,000 years. You're going on with me.
The word is said, and we'll follow you.
You ready to start a sun-up?